Okay, so in no way am I a pyromaniac, but I know that's like a condition that actually like people have, and it's actually the most scariest thing. Like, I thought cavemen were addicted to fire, or at least obsessed with it, but I guess some women in this world are also obsessed with fire. I guess when Alicia Keys said, "This girl is on fire," she really meant she was on fire. All right, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So today's story seems a little out of pocket, and don't get me wrong, it is, and no one should actually go through this danger, but I'm gonna say this right now, being in a fire is not fun, especially when it's your own house. I remember back when I was in grade 9 going over to grade 10, it was the summer of, and I remember I was basically just, hanging out with my friends on Xbox and doing the same old thing. But then I remember one time I ended up going to this friend party that we were going to. It wasn't really a party, it was more like to get together somewhat, or a getty as people may say. And I remember I ended up going to it. When I got there, I saw a lot of different friends of mine and also saw a couple chicks that I recognized. Now, 2 of them I recognized and I already did the Devil's Tango with at the time, so obviously I didn't talk to them, but there was this one girl that I saw and she was absolutely beautiful. Like, don't get me wrong, she was outstanding looking. So I remember as a man, I decided to walk up to her and say, "Hey, like, how's it going?" I remember she looked at me at first kind of oddly saying like, I'm good, like, what's going on? And then me and her, we started having a conversation about something she really cared about, because, all girls always talk about what they're passionate about in life. It's just the way things go. And then one thing led to another. I ended up doing my unspoken riz. I looked at her deeply in the eyes and I said, "You look really good today." She ended up laughing and giggling, and I knew she liked it. And then one thing led to another. She ended up telling me, "Oh, like, do you want to go outside with me?" At this point, I'm not gonna lie, I thought I was in the clear and I already pulled this girl. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Another girl to go do the Devil's Tango with. But then I remember basically me and her, we ended up going outside for some reason. And then afterwards, that's when I realized that it was the most ultimate turn-off thing that I ever received. She ended up going in her purse, pulling out a cigar and started smoking it. Yes, she was smoking an actual like cigarette. It was the most disgusting thing ever. And kids, don't smoke. Whatever you do, don't smoke, don't vape, don't do anything with basically smoke in your lungs. It's the most disgusting thing ever. And honestly, to this day, every time I see a kid go out there and just like start vaping or something, I end up going into ultimate disgust. Like, I'm sorry, but what's the big flex for blowing a fat cloud out of your mouth? Like unless you're doing like a cool trick like those weirdos do, like there's really no point. But anyways, I remember this girl started smoking in front of me and I got ultimately disgusted. If you guys don't know, back when I was a kid, let's say I had a really traumatizing experience with cigarettes, and to this day, I hate the smell and taste of them. So I always stay away from them. And knowing this girl was smoking right in front of me, don't get me wrong, she was attractive, but since she was holding a cigarette between her 2 fingers, it made things even worse for me, and I didn't want to talk to her anymore. But me, I already went so far into flirting with her that me just blowing her off wouldn't be easy. So I remember I kind of like ended up like talking to her about a subject that she wasn't really passionate about, and kind of just, took over the conversation, because when you take over a conversation, you can end up ending it, and that's what I did. I remember I ended up pretending I had a phone call, which was, I'm not gonna lie, pretty blatantly obvious, but at the same time, I really didn't care. I just wanted to get out of there. And I remember I literally picked up my phone out of my pocket with literally the home lock screen showing, and I pretended I was talking to my friend telling me to come back inside. She knew I was faking it, but she went along with it and said, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll catch you in there." As she ends up taking a big puff out of her cigarette, which is ultimately so gross. But basically, I remember I went inside, and when I got inside, I remember I was talking to my friends and stuff, saying how like, that girl's really weird and stuff. Basically, I was back talking her, and then afterwards, I just ended up hanging out with the other girls that I've already done the Devil's Tango with. Now, usually around this time, I won't lie to you, usually the day would just move on, and this girl wouldn't care about me and just call me an absolute, eggplant and move on. But this girl wasn't having it. For some reason, when I was talking to the other 2 girls, the girl ended up walking up to me saying, "Oh, I thought you were talking to your other friends. What happened?" Nothing. I had a conversation with them, is what I said to her. But she wasn't having it. She kept like basically trying to talk to me and stuff. And honestly, it got to the point where all the girls stayed away from me because they thought I was just gonna flirt with her. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was in the wrong for doing it in the first place, but seriously? Like, you had to really cut in like that? So I remember after a while, I basically looked at her and I said, "Listen, I'm just really not into you. Like, it's just not for me." And at that point, for some reason, this girl thought it was her cue to literally pull me in and kiss me. She ended up making out with me, and I'm not gonna lie, she tasted disgusting. Like, literally, she tasted like smoke in her mouth. It was the most grossest thing ever, and I started to realize how much yellow teeth she had, and knowing that I was rubbing up against my lips, yeah, no thanks. Keep your buck teeth out of my face. So I remember I kind of just started pulling away, and I'm like, okay, listen, like, you gotta stop, bro. Like, I'm not interested. And I ended up walking away. Walking away is usually the best method to, like, get away from people, but for some reason, this one girl was just weird. But she ended up kind of leaving me alone after that, which, I mean, it worked. But then after a while, I remember in the middle of the living room, this girl would randomly pull out her lighter and start playing with it. And it wasn't one of those, like, little lighters that you see most smokers have. She had, like, this really big metal one that, like, had, like, a latch on top, basically. It was, like, one of those old school style ones. And I remember this girl would flip it around and start playing with fire like it was, like, her best friend. I found it so gross and at the same time, really just weird. So I ended up kind of staying away from her. her. And then afterwards, I remember this girl started dropping her lighter on the ground when it was like turned on. But luckily, from the velocity of the fall of it going down, it ended up like going out at the same time. So luckily, I mean, you know, she didn't set the house on fire, but obviously I went to go tell my buddy about it. And my buddy wasn't having it. So I remember my buddy walked up to her and said, hey, like, listen, if you're gonna play with the lighter, just get out. But then I remember this girl made it a bigger deal than it actually was and basically said, oh, look, what's wrong with my lighter? Like, you got a problem with it? And I remember another buddy of mine ended up coming up behind her and taking her lighter from her hand, and she had a fit. Like, no joke, she started screaming. She's like, give me back my lighter, and basically making it a bigger deal than it actually was. Now, at this point, I remember my friends basically told her to get out, and she ended up leaving. And when she left, I thought things were over. So I remember, like, after a while, like, I want to say 5 hours later, I ended up going home and started walking home. But when I was walking home, I remember I had a gut feeling that something was wrong. I don't know why. I just kept looking around the area, and I'm like, dude, something seems really off. But I remember when I entered my front doorstep and I turned around for like a quick second because I felt like someone was staring at me, there was. It was the girl that was a smoker, and she literally looked at me and said, so this is where you live? Yeah, is what I said. And then she's like, so you're telling me that you're gonna flirt with me with all this and you're just not gonna invite me in? I mean, I guess. So I remember I ended up opening my house and I basically snuck her into my room and we started talking. I'm like, hey, listen, can you like be careful with the lighter though? Like, I actually don't like want any fire light up in my room. And then she ended up pulling out her lighter and she ended up lighting it and basically saying, you know what's good about fire? And I'm like, what? And then she ended up saying, it always brings a light to the world, and when you want something gone, it'll make sure it goes away for you. Okay, girl, you're psychotic. Okay, like, if any girl ever tells you that with a lighter like close to her face, bro, you already know she's about to be a pyro. So I remember I basically told her, listen, I gotta go to bed. I got stuff to do tomorrow. Can you just like go? She got really upset because she wanted to do the devil's tango with me, but I ended up taking her out the door and basically ended up leaving her there. I didn't know if she walked away from my front doorstep, but you know, I ended up just going back to my room and sleeping. And when I remember out of nowhere, I see a truck come up in front of my house, and this girl didn't end up going inside the car though. I was looking outside my window and she ended up going to the back of the truck, pulling out some like gas canister and started walking back towards my house. Now, at this point I start panicking. I'm like, what is going on? So I remember I basically, you know, get outside with my pajamas and I see her literally pouring gasoline, like flammable gasoline, in front of my doorstep. I look at her, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? She ends up looking at me saying, honestly, you're just one of those people that need to burn. What is what I said? And then I remember basically one thing led to another. She ended up literally turning on her lighter and dropping on the ground and started lighting my house on fire. She literally lit my porch on fire. I didn't know what to think. I was like, what are you doing? And I started panicking. I remember when I started panicking, instantly my dad ended up coming outside and seeing what was going on. And the first thing he did was he literally ended up running for the hose on the side of the house and started spraying it down, and also not just spraying the fire down, but also spraying the girl down. It was so funny because she ended up becoming like a wet cat, basically. I remember when that happened, another person ended up coming out of the truck, and it was actually her dad. And I'm surprised her dad let her do that because, like, I guess her dad's like psychotic. But basically, her dad ended up walking up to my dad and saying, oh, like, your son's a player. Like, he just pulls all these girls and doing all this. He deserves to burn. Bro, what's up with these people on fire is what I was thinking in my mind. But I remember my dad ended up calling 911, and one thing led to another. They both ended up getting arrested. The truck was, you know, basically towed away, and honestly, the next day, I just never heard from her. To this day, I don't even know what school she goes to, nothing, but all I'm gonna say is just be careful with the girls you talk to, because who knows, they might just light your house on fire. Anyways, guys, that's basically it for today's story. Make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and like I always say, fall for more embarrassing but crazy stories. All right, peace out, guys.